Welcome to Mark's British Airways Fleet Update, looking at short and long-haul fleets.
Thanks for joining us on the British Airways Fleet Update. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click for notifications.
Hello once again and welcome to the British Airways Fleet Update with the very latest across the British Airways fleet, the subsidiaries, the short haul and the long haul, giving you a bit of a clue about what's happening with the A380 heavy maintenance, lots of Dreamliner developments in their fleet and a few updates, of course, across all the other fleets as well. Lots going on. I always say that at the start of these videos. Maybe it's a bit boring, but it's absolutely true. A week flies by and there's just pages of updates for me to deliver to you, and we'll try and get through it all and share with you what's happening. Some fleets are slightly busier than others. One of the fleets that's just quietly getting on with life without a lot of activity is the Embraer 190 fleet out of London City for the British Airways City Flyer subsidiary. After quite a few days with no City Flyer aircraft at Exeter under maintenance, one of their Embraer 190s flew down to Exeter as the City Flyer 9769 on the 3rd of June, and 3 days down at Exeter for relatively light attention, back as the City Flyer 9770 on the 6th of June, straight back onto commercial duties, but once again that left Exeter back where it started with no City Flyer aircraft under maintenance. Moving across to the Gatwick-based Euroflyer fleet, well, I can tell you the world of Euroflyer out of Gatwick, the short-haul Airbus fleet, it's all becoming just a little bit clearer, I think, now as to what the strategy over the next few weeks and months is. And it's clear to me, I think, the British Airways through the winter was catching up with maintenance, that some of that overspilled into the start of the summer season, but that's beginning to settle now. So one of their Airbus A321s, X-ray uniform, X-ray Lima, returned from maintenance at Glasgow on the evening of Saturday the 7th of June, flew down as Euroflyer 9750. They used the call sign Griffin, Glasgow back to Gatwick, and it's allocated work from the morning of Sunday the 8th of June. But interestingly, the pilots didn't fly an aircraft up to Glasgow to replace it. So effectively that gives British Airways an extra aircraft to play with. Whether an aircraft will become due maintenance that needs to go to Glasgow, that remains to be seen. Well, I've been telling you for 3 or 4 weeks now about Echo Uniform Victor on loan from Heathrow across to Gatwick. It's pretty clear, I think, to all of us now that that's a permanent transfer. Flight Radar 24 shows it as a Euroflyer aircraft, but of course that's not any form of official position. The Civil Aviation Database still shows it as BA mainline, but a number of you and other interested parties have been chattering away on the Flyer Talk website, and quite interesting, but I think reasonably clear now, 5 of the A320s are going to permanently move across from Heathrow mainline fleet to Gatwick Euroflyer, Uniform Victor, Uniform Whiskey, Uniform X-ray, Uniform Yankee and Uniform Zulu. So 3 of those aircraft are already operating out of Gatwick. Uniform Whiskey, Uniform Zulu are still part of the Heathrow contingent, but I think the position is that British Airways want to get their money's worth out of the 2 aircraft that are due to go to scrap, and that is to say that they're almost certainly going to fly them up to the hours available before their next significant maintenance check, and then they'll draw a line in the sand and send them down to St Athan for scrap. So those 2 aircraft, Golf Alpha Tango Juliet, Mike India Delta Oscar And of course, also worth bearing in mind, there is an aircraft on lease from Titan Airways until the end of the summer, but it may be for winter they don't need it, but at some point they'll have to think about rebalancing the fleet. So those two aircraft will move across from the Heathrow fleet, but of course the step down in the number of aircraft required to be away from day-to-day operations for maintenance has also helped British Airways to move into this position. So that's the Euroflyer fleet based at London Gatwick, and what's happening and what I think will happen over the next few weeks. And just an update then on the wet lease. Only one Titan Airways Airbus remains on lease. That's Papa Oscar Whiskey Kilo. The sublease of the other aircraft terminated on Monday, the 2nd of June, and that was coinciding with the arrival of Uniform Yankee from Heathrow. So it was Papa Oscar Whiskey Mike that concluded its lease. Its last regular duty was the BA 2609 Griffin 6 Bravo Victor was the call sign, 2nd of June. It then interestingly picked up some wet lease duties for a couple of different airlines across to Jersey and Guernsey. Bit off a topic for this update really, but quite interesting to see such a large aircraft flying across to Guernsey. I guess some of us not even aware that it could fit there, but it clearly did. And then slightly oddly, but perhaps not entirely surprisingly, with the aircraft still being around Gatwick, British Airways called it back to just help out with a little bit of a fleet shortage for one trip to Dubrovnik, the BA 2722 back on the 23 on the 5th of June, shortly after Papa Oscar Whiskey Mike left Gatwick for chewy wet lease work elsewhere at UK airports. So that keeps us with the Airbus A320 derivatives and moves us across to London Heathrow. Let me tell you, on the 320 fleet, Echo Uniform Yankee Romeo, that remains British Airways Glasgow maintenance, been there since the 17th of May. Echo Uniform Tango returned from maintenance at Malta on the 30th of May. BA 9274 from Malta across to London Heathrow and picked up its commercial duties the very next day. The flight crew that brought it back had already headed out to Malta with a different aircraft, Echo Uniform Romeo, which is the next one to go into the Malta facility for British Airways maintenance, flying out as the BA 9273. Echo Uniform Papa returned from Madrid maintenance, BA 9278 on the 3rd of June. A little bit of a break at Heathrow, but back onto commercial duties on the 5th of June, the BA 640 to Athens. Echo Uniform Yankee Lima remains at Dublin under maintenance there since the 28th of May. And last time we told you about Echo Uniform Papa Delta getting into some difficulties at Berlin and remaining there on the ground. 3 days on the ground at Berlin while it was seemingly repaired, returned empty to London Heathrow as the BA 9276 on the 31st of May and back into traffic the next day on the 1st of June. And Echo Uniform Yankee Papa remains at Malta for maintenance and been there for a month since the 3rd of May. So that's all the action, the activity, the developments and the news around the British Airways short-haul fleet. We'll move on now and have a look at the long-haul fleet, except I have just got one other thing to update you on, which is the pilot circuit training. Back to Chateauroux, so quite a lot of activity at Shannon until recently, but Golf Echo Uniform Zulu deployed on the 3rd of June for pilot circuit training. British Airways, of course, working really hard to get through a large number of pilots that need to be trained and then to be given some of this practical experience. The aircraft was in the system to fly out to Châteauroux early in the morning on the 3rd of June as the BA 9260, but it never actually left using that flight designator. It flew out as the Speedbird 1 Tango, but did come back as the BA 9261. Usual business there at Châteauroux with quite an intense series of airfield circuits, pilots taking off, rotating, climbing normally to about 2,000 feet in the circuit and then descending for a touch and go back into the circuit, and then every hour or couple of hours they were landing and taking a break, probably swapping over pilots, I would imagine. New deliveries, obviously work is continuing at Toulouse and Hamburg, and we expect to see some more aircraft over the next few weeks and months, but nothing immediately to report today. Normally the Airbus A350 fleet gets on with its business and doesn't give us a great deal to talk about. A little bit busier this time. X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Lima flew across to Malta, the BA 9172 on the 31st of May. Maintenance there, and of course it remains there for now. We saw the cancellation of the BA 247 back on the 246, Sao Paulo rotation on the 4th and 5th of June due to non-availability of Airbus A350s. And X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Bravo was flown out to Las Vegas, BA 275 on the 4th of June, but didn't return on the BA 274 that evening. Not sure if that was technical or crew related. The aircraft did come back the following day on the 5th of June as the BA 9178, which almost certainly means it was an empty flight back from Vegas into London Heathrow, but resuming business the next day. And X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Golf was unable to return from Delhi on the 3rd of June. We understand the engine on the aircraft was damaged, one of the engines damaged. The BA 256 was cancelled, or at least it didn't operate, but strangely there were two BA 256s 3 days later once Bravo Golf was repaired. On the 6th of June, X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Alpha, which was the aircraft that had just arrived, that stepped into a BA 256 Delta, and X-Ray Whiskey Bravo Golf, after its 3 days, operated the regular BA 256. Now that would suggest that passengers had perhaps been kept on the ground at Delhi for 3 days. It's quite a long time, but there are more limited options from Delhi than perhaps some of the other BA stations, so that might explain what's gone on there. So the Airbus A350 developments for you there. A350 fleet. Last time there was a bit of drama around the A380 fleet. One of my viewers even suggesting that it was clickbait, but there certainly was cancellations, there was disruption for customers, and things have settled. Now this is becoming a bit of a trend with the A380 fleet. Many of you might be familiar, but it's really what some of us call the law of small numbers. I think sometimes things happen on the A380 fleet all at once, and that means that diagramming 10 aircraft out of 12 when one of them is away in Manila can become a problem. So effectively it only gives British Airways one aircraft to play with, to manipulate, and if that aircraft has a technical fault that they cannot resolve, or it's right up against a maintenance deadline, then British Airways has no room for manoeuvre at the point that another aircraft develops a problem. And that does happen on occasions, probably more occasions, I guess, than British Airways or many of its customers would like. But right now, we look back over the last week and things have actually settled down. Now, one of the things that is clear, X-Ray Lima Echo Bravo over in Manila is clearly reaching the end of that maintenance overhaul. And you can tell that because the transponder was active on the 4th of June. And what that suggests is that the aircraft is undergoing tests where the aircraft's actually connected to a power supply, and they've been working their way through the systems. So at some point fairly soon, we're expecting that aircraft to be released. Now, I mentioned last time the BA11 is no longer scheduled for A380 operation out to Singapore. So we'll see how they decide to return that and in what order. Of course, if they decide to take an aircraft out to Manila before they bring this back, that could bring its own challenge to the availability of aircraft. So let's see over the next few days what happens there. X-Ray Lima Echo Juliet has been out of use at Heathrow since the 3rd of June, but as I suggested earlier, good availability amongst the rest of the British Airways fleet means that as a result they've avoided any cancellations in the last week. Moving on to the 777 fleet, which has also been a fleet that's given British Airways a few challenges recently, but appears to have settled down somewhat. Yankee Mike uniform has been out of use at Heathrow since the 13th of May, Victor India Alpha since the 23rd of May, and Yankee Mike Echo out of use at Gatwick from the 26th of May to the 6th of June, back into traffic that day on the BA 2159. The Yankee Mike Lima had headed across from Heathrow to Gatwick to support with long haul duties for 4 or 5 days, but back to Heathrow BA 9174 on the 2nd of June. And Victor India Romeo remains at British Airways maintenance in Cardiff for some attention. There was a cancellation out of Gatwick on one of the very busy Orlando flights, BA 2037, back on the 2036 on the 2nd of June, when a Yankee Mike Charlie went technical with an APU. But that aircraft did return to traffic shortly after. And a bit of drama at London Heathrow with Yankee Mike Kilo. Technical issues on its takeoff roll. Must be really frustrating to, get through security, get on your flight, settle down, taxi out, and then just as you start to roll down the runway, the engines are powered off and you brake and come off the runway. But that's what happened to the BA85 to Vancouver on the 4th of June. They cancelled the flight, cancelled the return. Nothing seriously wrong with Yankee Mike Kilo, as it was fixed for operation the next day out to Mumbai. Strangely, whether it's just a coincidence or whether it's related to this, I don't know, but the coverage from Flight Focus 365 at London Heathrow, which had been mentioned on a couple of the web forums where people had watched this incident, is actually being removed from the Flight Focus channel. So I'm not sure if it's related to this incident or if there is another reason why that day's coverage on Flight Focus 365 has been taken down, but it's the only day missing from recent times, so I can't offer you the opportunity to have a look at that incident there, although we've got the Flight Radar 24 footage here of it taxiing out, commencing the takeoff roll and then taxiing back to a stand. Well, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner fleet, over the next few years, this fleet's going to get bigger and bigger and will become just a massive chunk of the long haul operation for British Airways. But even now, it is taking up 2 slides here on my presentation, quite a significant amount of activity. So Zulu Bravo Juliet Golf, which is the latest 787-8 to finish Club Suites fitment in Cardiff, is just about ready. We're expecting a flight as this video goes live on the 8th of June back to London Heathrow and straight into traffic. I did also comment that this aircraft had been inoperative for 3 weeks leading up to its movement to Cardiff, and that we just needed to keep an eye on whether the aircraft actually is repaired and airworthy once Club Suites fitment is complete. But it does appear that is the case, and the aircraft will be going straight back into service. Juliet Foxtrot remains at Cardiff for Club Suites fitment. You might remember they sort of swapped them over and moved them down in slightly different order, but that will be the next aircraft after Juliet Golf to emerge. Juliet Charlie remains under maintenance. Also worth just keeping an eye on Zulu Bravo Kilo India, been out of use at London Heathrow since the 16th of May. We suspect that's related to Rolls-Royce engines, but Zulu Bravo Kilo November, which had been out of use for a while, 12 days out of traffic at London Heathrow. That aircraft kept getting allocated flights and then not working them, but they seem to have sorted the issues and the problems with that aircraft, and it headed off to Mexico City on the 31st of May. And last time we all came together on this channel for a fleet update, we talked about 787-9 Zulu Bravo Kilo Charlie suffering damage on the ground at Sydney on the 28th of May. That led to the cancellation of the BA-16 back to Singapore and London Heathrow. What happened then was the aircraft moved for repairs, we think, to its engine casing, moved into the Qantas facility, which of course is the main home base for Qantas in Sydney Airport, and the damage to those engine cowlings was repaired. The aircraft was then released and flew on the 5th of June on an empty sector BA 9177. Now, a bit of chat online about the length of empty sectors that British Airways has flown before, and we know that they have flown longer sectors than this. I think Brussels to Melbourne was being quoted, but this is one of the longest empty flights that British Airways has flown in its history. I say one of, so I'm not suggesting this is particularly revolutionary, but the BA 9177 Sydney to Bahrain, and the aircraft touched down in Bahrain. You might say, why Bahrain? I think couple of reasons. It's a lot less busy than Doha or Dubai, where they might otherwise have gone, and it's also a regular destination for the 787 crews, so the crew's very familiar with Bahrain, but it touched down and they changed crews, refueled the aircraft and got it ready. I say in just 71 minutes. Of course, you might say to me, Mark, these aircraft have no passengers on, they have no freight. All the crew have to do is get themselves off and get a new crew on, and they have to stick a bit of fuel in. But obviously it's empty tanks, quite a lot of fuel needed, 71 minutes, and then back to Heathrow and straight on to the BA 169 out to Shanghai. So good to see that aircraft fixed, repaired, back in traffic. One imagines the insurance claim for that incident's going to be pretty substantial. You've got a whole load of passengers who've been kicked off their flight and have had to be re-accommodated. You've got an aircraft out of use for over a week. You've got to fly two sets of crew, because such a long flight they need a heavy crew as well. Two sets of crew flying, you know, right round the world to Sydney, and another set of crew to Bahrain. So yeah, that probably doesn't all come cheap, but it's great to see the stages that British Airways have to go through to fix a problem like that. And it's also good to see the cooperation with Qantas. You know, they didn't put the aircraft in a queue or say it would take ages. They just got on with the work once they'd agreed it with British Airways. So a good ending to that episode. I said there was 2 pages, and there are Zulu Bravo Kilo on the 787-9 fleet appears to have run into difficulty over in Pittsburgh. It arrived touchdown as the BA 171. Its return flight, the BA 170, on the 4th of June was cancelled. The aircraft remains at Pittsburgh, and we are getting closer and closer, but we're not quite there yet, to seeing Golf Zulu Bravo Lima, which is the final 787 10 for British Airways in the current batch, and the final aircraft with Rolls-Royce engines that's been doing some test flights out of Charleston, South Carolina, which is the Boeing facility. Of course, it's in full BA livery. We think they're now into the customer flights, which is where British Airways actually take the aircraft out with Boeing supervision, and they make sure that they're comfortable, that the aircraft has been built properly, that it has the capability that it should have, that there's no obvious faults apparent either with the build or the software or anything else. So the latest of those flights took place on the 5th of June using the call sign Bravo Oscar Echo 112. Pretty likely, I think, that we'll see that aircraft flying across from Charleston over to the UK very soon. The options are they might fly it to Cardiff and perhaps do the final checks and preparation in Cardiff and then bring it to Heathrow, or they may just take it straight to Heathrow and get it into traffic shortly afterwards. The percentage of the British Airways Dreamliner fleet that's unavailable has fallen down to 20%, dominated by the 787 8 fleet, with 4 of the 12 aircraft not available, but that of course will change as we see Juliet Golf coming back into traffic. 2 787-9s out of use and 2 787-10s. I think one of the other aircraft that we do just want to keep an eye on is the aircraft that's been stopped the longest, which is Zulu Bravo Lima Delta on the 787-10 fleet. That aircraft has been out of action since the 23rd of September, so it's sort of 9 months, approaching 9 months now that aircraft has not flown, and we know that British Airways has been keen to avoid individual aircraft being stopped on the ground for too long. There's sort of obvious reasons about that. There's other deterioration that can occur to the aircraft frame if it's not used in the air. So I would expect to see some progress with that perhaps in the coming weeks. Well, that brings us to a conclusion. Thanks very much for watching the British Airways fleet update here on Marks Trains, Planes and Trams. I'm always grateful if you can find a minute to bang the like button on your device or screen. And if you've got a thought, a comment, a bit of information to bang into the comment section, all the better. Thanks to everyone that works hard to contribute and enhance the Flyer Talk website. And there's always a few hints and tips, a bit of information, pointers there for deeper research from me, and I'm very grateful. And if you do find a moment to check out Flyer Talk, I'd certainly recommend it. I'll catch you again for another British Airways fleet update, but there's also a few more videos about other bits and pieces coming towards you here on Marks Trains, Planes and Trams very soon, and I'll catch you then.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and click the notification button so you don't miss any of the great trips Mark has coming your way on this YouTube channel.